All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here. We are joined tonight by Miss Vicky Richter. She is from the Patriot Chicks. So tonight we're going to talk about some really interesting coverage that she has been doing about a new documentary series that also features Veterans for Child Rescue and some of our recent operations at the border, at the Super Bowl, and a few other exciting events. So Vicky, first of all, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We know you've had a lot going on in recent times, and we're excited to talk about it. Can you tell us just a little bit about your background? We'll get into more of it, but just like an elevator pitch about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm German, and I'm an investigative journalist from Germany. I came here to America after 2021, after Germany got kicked by the tyranny and the globalist agenda. So it was not a free country anymore for journalists to work actually really as journalists. So I came to America, and my background, I'm a veteran. I served 8.5 years in the German Bundeswehr in the 𝗝𝗡𝗊𝗚 unit. This is, in America, you call it special operations. So I have a little bit background in psyops, and yeah, now I'm an investigative journalist, and I try to expose human trafficking, especially child trafficking, and the border crisis, and how the government and all those global elites try to hide it.
Oof, love it. So much to unpack there. So we are excited to unpack more of this and what we've been up to recently. So for those who may not know who Veterans for Child Rescue is or what we do, so we are a nonprofit. We are based in the USA. Our mission is to expose and eradicate child trafficking, and we do this via various media opportunities, interviews, and raising awareness. Awareness in this case is so important because it literally arms we the people with the knowledge and the power to take action and to protect children. And it also reduces the predator's ability to operate. When we the people know the actual truth of what's going on, we know how to act accordingly and how we want to respond to it. So again, Vicky is a recent addition to what we're doing in terms of capturing some of the work we do and adding it to her documentary. And then the other aspect of what we do is in eradicating child trafficking. We put bad guys behind bars. So we do counter-trafficking operations in conjunction with local law enforcement. We have a 100% conviction rate. So as you may know, it's a very dark industry. There's a lot of intentional opposition. So that being said, let's talk about what we've been up to most recently. Let's start with the Super Bowl. I wasn't there personally, but I know you were there personally with Greg Sawyer, boots on the ground. So tell us a little bit about that. I don't know what you expected it to be like, but was it very different than what you expected, or how was it?
So it was actually a little bit how I expected, but some parts were totally different. So I was shocked about how less people know about human trafficking awareness. Like because when I travel a lot for being boots on the ground journalist, so you hear often at the airports those advertisements or announcements about if you say something, if you see something, say something, and this Homeland Security number, what you can call when you see something curious about human trafficking. But when because we tried to ask attendees and fans of the Super Bowl, even at the golf tournament around the Super Bowl at Phoenix, how much they know about human trafficking, and even if there's a special unit for human trafficking or fighting against human trafficking on federal basis, and there is none. And most of the people say, yeah, sure, we have that. So no, you don't. So that's so crazy when you see in their faces like, what, we don't? We have like 80,000 agents for ISIS, or getting tax money collected, but you don't have a special unit for human trafficking on a federal basis. That's actually really dangerous and should be very alarming for everyone here in this country, because the human trafficking and child trafficking is not only a thing or what happens to illegal children who comes through the border. It happens even in your backyards with your children. And what I learned through Vets for Child Rescue is actually every third child who is human trafficked is American. So that's a huge number. And when you then go through this, because I could be boots on the ground with 𝘁𝗂𝘀, and it was a very, very, I'm very thankful and grateful for had this opportunity to get this real view on the side of law enforcement, or how you as an organization fight against those criminals. And when you see firsthand how that works, how those pedophiles try to groom you while you are texting with them, because this is how you can get them with texting. You go in those sex chats all around those events, and then you pretend to be younger age, and then when you mention that 3 times and they still don't see any problem in that, that's very frightening. As a single mom, it's very, very frightening. You muted. I can't hear you. It's oh yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So for those who may not know what Vicky was talking about, and if you haven't seen our documentary Contraland, please watch it. But we do sting operations in conjunction with local law enforcement, where we essentially allow the predator to incriminate themselves if they were already planning on doing so, but we turn that evidence into law enforcement and make sure that that predator is arrested. So when Vicky or other of our decoys pose as children, it's incredibly easy to find these people. They come to us. It's, Jack Farmer said, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, or even easier, meaning it doesn't take a lot for a child to be on the internet and be confronted by or approached by a predator. These people are actually online seeking them out. So internet safety is an entirely additional topic, which we talk about often, and I implore you to visit our website. It's vets4childrescue.org or v4cr.org to learn more about safeguarding your children. But you've heard it from her. She was one of the decoys in a recent counter-trafficking operation. And even for we as adults, disgusting is an understatement when you actually get into the mind of these predators and what they intend to do to children, and how they're so blatant about it. They're so bold about it. They're not even trying to hide their sick fetishes and desires. So first of all, bless your heart for dealing with that, because it's not something a lot of people can stomach. But also, it's very rewarding, I think, to be on this side of shining the light on that darkness, because a lot of people are afraid of it. I'm sure you've seen this. A lot of people think it's scary. And when petite females like us tend to step up and show them they have nothing to be afraid of, and in fact, the people who are afraid of it and continuing to ignore it are what's allowing this to continue being the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the world, in the entire planet, the sale and exploitation of children. So please continue with the story about the Super Bowl operations. I just wanted to really emphasize how it's not difficult to find these predators. Posing as a child online, predators will find you. So real quick, if your child has unsupervised access to the internet, this is a great time to rethink that. And again, on our website, we have a lot of safety apps and monitoring tools that you can use to safeguard your children. So we will post the link in the comments. But Vicky, please continue. She was talking about the recent operations at the Super Bowl with 𝘁𝗂𝘀𝘀.
Yes, so that was very important for me to see it with my eyes, because as a journalist, I'm very fact focused, and I don't just repost something what I heard about rumors. Now I have to see it with my own eyes, and then I can say, yeah, that's actually happening, and this is dangerous. And why I did this documentary was because I was very concerned, because I did a lot of border trips. So I'm from Germany. I'm here since 2021, and I was at the border now 17 times. That's more than your president was, I guess. Yeah. So that's very and it's eye-opening when you go there and see what's happening through the gaps, and when those children come around through those gaps unoccupied, or when there are only one adult is there, and you actually see, yes, this is not the mother, this is not the father, but you can't do anything. Border Patrol can't do anything. Sometimes you think they don't want to do something, but I think most of the time they just not allowed to, because of those policies. The new policies are that you're not even allowed to call them illegal. They are immigrants right now, and asylum seekers. And this makes your situation very, very dangerous and alarming, because a country without a functional border is no country. So we have these problems in Europe because we have the European Union and we don't have any borders. So even when you have a law which is called the Dublin Law, where people, when they want to have asylum in Europe and they have to seek for asylum in the first country where they step on in Europe, that's mostly a country which is not very rich and doesn't have very good or fancy social nets, what the government would prevent to the refugees. So they just walk through three other countries and end up in Germany. So yeah, that's very alarming, and that seems to come to America too.
It's a crazy story, especially for someone who has seen other countries, because many people have not, and they have a very limited understanding of how these things work, but specifically how these work in other countries, even third world countries.
Yes.
For example, I was born and raised in Brazil, and I was born and raised between Brazil and Mexico. So as an example, in South America and in Latin America, you can't just go into a country and not have paperwork and expect that they'll allow you to stay. That's not how that works in any country that I'm aware of. So when people are not clear on that process working and how that works in the USA, that's a whole other topic. But what we're specifically involved with and concerned about are the amount of children being brought over the southern border and the harm being done to them, not only along the way, but once they get here.
Yes.
So we've spoken about this, and as all those watching may know, this is somewhat of a delicate topic, especially for those who haven't been there, don't understand what it is. I've crossed that border hundreds of times. I'm not recommending that to people. I'm just saying, if you haven't been there, if you haven't seen the slave trade, you should add a little disclaimer to your opinion that you don't know what you're talking about, because for everyone who has opinions about how this is affecting the humans, this is a humankind crisis, meaning the humans brought to and over the border are experiencing modern day slavery. But again, when it comes to children who cannot consent, who cannot make the choice to be there or what happens next, there's a lot of very dangerous things that happen. So we were talking about the Super Bowl, but I know that you guys went to the border soon after. I do want to get back to some of the stories about the Super Bowl and the counter ops there, but real quick on the border, since we're talking about it, I know you guys were in the Arizona border after that. What were some of the, I guess, stories or experiences you had there?
So we got contacted to a little group of 8 people. There were I think 6 children, 1 elderly woman, and 1 guy who probably claimed to be under 18 but probably was older. So he gets special treatment, because when you are illegal and claim for asylum as a child, you get other treatment than when you would be an adult. That's common sense. So most of the people try to look younger. And the thing what was my heart really not breaking, but what I was feeling sad was it was so cold. It was around 33 degrees, and these children, they had a sweater on. So, and it's freezing cold in the desert. I can't recommend it to someone to if you like camping, go there, but it's very cold. And they didn't even had the proper clothing to go on this trail, to walk by and hope to be found by Border Patrol. And the problem is right now that Border Patrol only can provide a third of their actually manpower to patrol at the border. 1/3 is doing babysitting at the facilities, and the other third maybe lost their job or quit their job because of the policies of the vaccine. So this whole border crisis is a made-up problem, and you could solve it so easily if you just shut down the border, because you can't fight the border crisis when you just have open borders. And when you want to save or help people who are leaving their country, you have to solve the reason why they leave their country. You can't just say, okay, you are all welcome, come over, we will take care. Your country will get destroyed. your economy doesn't even can feed all those people who are coming, because you don't even know who is else coming, or what do they bring. It's not only a humanitarian thing, because 60% is humanitarian. I get that, but the thing is, what you don't, what most of the liberal people or the people at the NGOs forget is 30% don't come with good intentions to your country. They can be terrorists, they can be cartel, they can murderer, drug smugglers, weapon smugglers, and they bring fentanyl, and then they can kill a whole city with the fentanyl. What sometimes border patrols or sheriff Lamb's people find when they do their patrol drivings at the highway. So those 30% can be very, very dangerous and critical for your country, and there is no way to stop it if you have open borders and such policies where people just say, oh, they're all immigrants and they're all asylum seekers. No, they're not.
Absolutely. So let's do some basic breakdown of logic and oversimplify this for people who don't understand. Immigration, we can all identify there's a process for that, and Vicky's very familiar with it. There's a lot of people that are very familiar with the legal process whereby we welcome people into our country and help them assimilate. Now let's back up and define what an invasion is. When you have around 40 to 50% of the people coming through the southern border that aren't even from Mexico, and you don't know where they're from, and you don't know what their intentions are, and you don't know how they got there, especially when some of these people are from entirely different continents, way across the ocean, third world countries, where typically you wouldn't have the resources to afford that type of flight across the water. So it would lead one to assume that there's something amiss here. But now let's also oversimplify the narrative that there are women and children seeking asylum and crossing the border that need our help. I'm going to ask you guys a rhetorical question. For those who still watch the news, have you even seen, of all the images and all the videos and all the posed examples of what we're supposed to believe is happening at the border, have you even seen footage to back up this narrative that there are tons of women and children? Or have you seen groups of people which involve mostly able-bodied men of all ages in those groups with some women and some children? But to Vicky's point, these are not families who are taking care of the children. She was talking about the children that they found at the border ops who were not even dressed appropriately for the weather. So in addition to the harsh conditions these people may experience, and again, we are specifically focused on the children, in addition to the weather, in addition to the very treacherous trek they're making on foot, sometimes with limited food and water, again, for those who haven't been there, there's a lot of bad things that can happen during their journey through Mexico and from wherever they came from. And then there's the whole process of what happens when they're essentially crossing the river. And then there's the whole process of what happens when they are held at these US-based agencies for processing, where a lot of bad things happen to most of the people there. And again, we are oversimplifying this, and we're also wording it rather softly because there are platforms like all the ones we are on right now that don't love the message we're sharing about protecting children. So we have to say this carefully, but I hope you understand what we're saying. Real quick pitch though, if you want to hear more without us having to censor ourselves, we do have a Patreon account where you can support us, and you can also hear the real story and the behind the scenes of what's going on. So please join us on Patreon for more truth. But that being said, there's an entirely additional chapter of this journey that people don't understand. So let's pretend that a family with children make it through the processing center and get sent somewhere in the USA. Let's even pretend that they have actual blood family that they are being reconnected with. And that's very rare, but let's pretend that's the case. Okay, let me oversimplify this. When you pay a cartel organization to transport you from point A, wherever you originated from, past the river, and then into the United States, there's a very hefty fee involved, which most third world country people cannot afford. So that means they are indebted to this cartel organization once they're in the USA. Once again, this is a form of modern day slavery, but to unpack this further, that means it's debt bondage, and wherever they are in the USA, they are still under the control of this criminal enterprise. So if you were the cartel and you wanted to essentially infiltrate the United States with something like the concept of foot soldiers who could be at your beck and call, if you will, because you control them, and they will do whatever you say. This is, again, a very long story short. We're just summarizing some key points. But when people talk about, we need to open our borders and help these people, those of us who have actually been there are saying, that's not helping these people. It's very, very harmful for them. And again, we are using soft wording because I'm sure Vicky and I have seen terrible things that we don't feel the need to unpack, but what we've seen would make people change their minds immediately, because the horrendous destruction to human rights, the way women and children and men are treated, that's the humanitarian crisis that people don't know about and aren't talking about. So once again, it's not immigration. It's not migration. When people's properties are being invaded, when our country is being invaded by these people coming in that then are still owned by the cartel once they get here, there are many layers to this problem. So unfortunately, it's not a simple problem. There's not really a one-size-fits-all solution, but implementing policies that our border officials can use to actually protect the border is a great start. Closing down the border and implementing and ensuring that the legal process is upheld is also a great start. Implementing a task force that combats human trafficking would be an excellent idea, seeing as that it's the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. The USA is the main source and destination of human trafficking. It's at least a $50 billion per year industry in the USA. And all those statistics were confirmed 2 or 3 years ago, before the borders were wide open. So when we talk about this with a lot of passion and a lot of gravity here, we want you guys to understand where we're coming from, where there's a lot of people who aren't aware because they're being told what to believe, and they think those are facts. But as independent journalists like Vicky will tell you, and as people who have actually seen the slave trade at the border will tell you, the truth is very different. So that being said,
Yeah.
Vicky is working on a documentary series called The Untold Truth. So tell us a little bit about that.
So this project is from our media company, the Patriot Chicks. And we were thinking about, okay, how can we expose this very critical topic, because nobody really wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to shut their eyes off it. And when you start talking about it, nah, that's more like experience theory. Oh, that's not happening in America. Yes, it is. And when you just see what happens at the Super Bowl, you can go 10 years back into the past, and you see arrests around those sport events in a high rocket number, like 400 in LA, then 500 around the Super Bowl 2015 in Phoenix. So those numbers just doesn't just pop up because suddenly, oh, we have a peak. No, that's because people are coming to those events. They want to have an advertisement, and many people have very, very, or some of those people have very delicate hunger of very criminal and disgusting hobbies or hunger of things. And some of the times it's sex trafficking, or most of the time it's sex trafficking, and some of those including children, and not only girls, also boys. And with this whole border crisis, what's going on, it was for me and my partner, 𝗁cie𝗶𝗶𝗵𝘁, so crazy to understand, why do we have a Super Bowl directly at the border? Why do we have a Super Bowl in Phoenix? Why does we make it so easy for these predators getting their victims, and nobody even can control it because nobody is counting the numbers. What you just said with the facilities, what's going on there. In the Trump when Trump was in office, they had DNA tests. They were testing the adults to check, is this child really belonging to this adult? This stopped when Biden came into office. Now the question is, why do they stop? Then you have some, you see that in our documentary, that because we're gonna we expose in the chapter 2 and 3 how even the Catholic churches and the NGOs are involved in human trafficking through all those facilities, and even the HHS is involved in human trafficking. Project Veritas did a very, very interesting investigative journalism part in Bonita Springs about how children under 16 had to do labor trafficking or even had to sell their bodies for sex from her aunt. She never met this person. And when I was flying back from Tucson after I was at the border, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and the airport was full of children with not American heritage. And then I was I played a little bit Project Veritas and let my phone camera going, and I was asking those people from the NGOs, what are you doing here? Do they belong to someone? Do they have family? Yeah, most of them are cousins. They have cousins here. And cousins is the perfect apology for everything. So you can have a cousin for everything. You can have a cousin for a pimp. You can have a cousin for getting a labor traffic. So this is really happening. And with our documentary, we want to make people aware of that. Okay, you can have fun with football. I don't want to start a war with the American football or with the sport football. It was just the main event, what's just happening in Phoenix, and that gave me the chance to talk about, okay, people, you have to think about this. There can be a connection. That doesn't have to be a connection. I don't say that the people get to America trafficked because of the Super Bowl to go there. No, there is a percentage of children and women get trafficked from Venezuela, Ecuador, Brazil, all those Southern American countries to America to end up in a human trafficking circle. And even children in America, American children, or what we just talked about with grooming in those sex chats with the children, how they get groomed and get the feeling, oh, you are so beautiful, just meet, I only love you. Such psychological tactics are using those pedophiles to groom the children to harm them. And with my experience in the journalism, mainstream media won't touch it. Most of our alternative media doesn't touch it. And now the question is why. It's like buying a car. Okay, so you can have, you can choose. Do you want to have a Ferrari or do you want to have a simple little Kia? Most of the people want to have the Ferrari, so the media is more reporting about a topic what is eatable for the people, so they have the clicks on it and they have the views. So we, the people, have to change our mindset to start listening to the bad news, to the news what hurts us, what makes us vomit, to give journalists and organizations like you the chance to expose the crimes, that we start thinking about it. And when we start thinking about it, we're going to see people, see something, and then we can actually do something. Because if we just say, oh, no, I don't want to hear it, and the media says, okay, when we put this story out, nobody going to see it. So we lose our clicks and we lose our money out of the clicks. So media is also a money thing. So if we start saying, okay, I want to hear the bad stuff, I really want to see what's going on, we have to push our alternative media into the direction, hey, please, let us see that. Put that on TV. And we have now published 2 episodes. Chapter 1 is about what law enforcement thinks about human trafficking and the Super Bowl, and if there's a connection or not. And then chapter 2 is about the Catholic Church, how they traffic the children, and how the NGOs, the charities, are working together. And there's an interview of a woman who is the leader of a NGO charity facility, short-term facility. She says the children and the families only stay there 2 hours maximum per day. And we have non-published footage yet in this documentary where you see that the children laying on the floor and sleeping there.
Oof, there's so much to unpack from everything you said. For
and
those,
and the thing is, so we published this 2 weeks. Now it's the second week, so the second chapter. Every week we're gonna publish a chapter, and we are already shadow banned. So when the funny thing is, so you see when you go on the YouTube page, only 300 people saw it. But when we go there as owner of the channel, we see, hey, we have actually 900 people watching it. So they YouTube already made a algorithm to shadow ban us, to make it look like, oh, nobody's interested in it. And when you don't have the views, you don't people can't find you. And I tried to find us on the Google YouTube search, they don't find us. So you have to go through our website. It's 𝗃patriotchicks.com, and then you go to the Untold Truth, and then you can see all the trailer and chapter 1 and chapter 2, and soon chapter 3 about it's going to be published. We talk about how the HHS, the Human and Health Service from America, funds human trafficking, and especially child trafficking from the border. And yeah, our biggest problem as independent journalists we get silenced by the media itself, because nobody actually wants to touch those stuff. And you know that as an organization with trying to survive and doing your great job. And I'm really grateful that you can that I could come with you and see what you're doing, because if you really want to help people and children, please help Vets for Child Rescue, because I was on the border with a lot of organizations, and I can tell you most of the organizations who say, oh, we do something, they don't actually do something. And I'm sorry for saying that. Probably people will say, oh, you're German, you don't even have a right to say something, but this is my experience. And like I said, you can help us journalists and organizations who are doing something when you really force media to show what you do, and that they are factual. That's not only to get the click. So okay, everybody says, oh, Fox News is talking about it. Yeah, but Fox News is talking about the little 10% was a little bit looks dirty, but there's so much more which is dirty. And this is not what Fox want to touch. And then the question is, why they don't want to touch it? And then you can see, okay, follow the money. And who pays Fox News? That's the Atlantic Bridge. And yeah, that should answer every question. So yeah, help us spread the word and watch the documentary. And in the documentary, you also see survivors. We will have also a whole chapter about survivors who speak about their experience who got trafficked. And I think that's one of the most important episodes what we have, because giving those people a voice, and that people see, okay, they are actually really victims, because we all know the Epstein story, and Epstein didn't kill himself. Yeah, but when you want to try to understand how trafficking really works, you have to hear what happens to the victim. And so I come from a country where victims don't have really power. So in Germany, when you get raped or something, it's more defending the rapist than defending the victim, because okay, you are a girl, you're gonna so we had a lot of cases with immigrants who came to our country. We can't say illegals because we don't have borders, so everyone who comes to our country is a immigrant. And every time when a woman or a child got raped by a person who with immigration background, they only say, yeah, this 14-year-old girl got raped by some 36 or 18-year-old people. But when a German rape someone, the name, the year, and so you know already how they put the narrative on. And then when you are a victim, it's very hard to explain it to themselves when you're a victim of a person who has a immigration background, because then they said, yeah, you actually invite him with your clothes. So we had a case in Germany 2015, when all those Pegida started and say, yeah, and Germany said, here, you are welcome, our cancer. There was New Year's Eve, and there was a 30-year-old girl. I think she was out for Sylvester, for New Year's Eve. And in Germany, you go out on New Year's Eve. And she was wearing a skirt, and which would be very normal for a Western country. So I think it's normal to wear a short skirt. And so, and our politicians made the victim actually to the person who advertised it. Okay, you were wearing that. You weren't too far away from them. So you gave them the signs that you actually wanted. And this is the thing, what happens in Germany very often when you start talking about that we don't even have this, that you see where rapists are in your neighborhood. We don't have that. So a pedophile can just move next to a school and see all his victims every day and then just grab one, because we are very into personal rights and don't share personal information. And I think that's very, very, very wrong.
When someone's a threat to children,
yes,
there's no way to keep them private or safe when the children are unsafe.
Yes. And like I said, and the very hard thing, what I what my experience is, that America goes more and more to those liberal policies what we have in Europe. Like, okay, it's super normal to be transgender or something. So I don't have a problem if you dress like a woman when you are a guy, but I have a problem when you are a teacher and put that in the classroom of my daughter. And this is coming to your country, and it's all about this we have to go into the future. We have to be very open. We're going to lose our faith in God. We're going to lose our love in your country. And how can you protect your children when you lose the love to your country, to fight for your country? Because what does your child have when you lose your country? And when you lose your identity as an American person, or what you lose as an identity of your of being American. So this all is going together, and we now I'm totally lost the way. I'm sorry. Going back to the documentary, is we just try to open the eyes of the people who wants to see it, and it's a non-political documentary, because I think it's very important to don't limit it on the right side, because most of the conservative people is that they are more open to those anti-human trafficking, anti-child trafficking topics, because they love Trump. Trump was one of the first presidents actually who made a executive order to fight human trafficking and child trafficking. You can't find them a lot on the left side because they don't like Trump. So I think that that's the first part. What we have to do is coming together back to the table and talk about, okay, that's not a political thing. That's a thing for against good and bad and save the children, because liberals also have children, libertarians have children, conservatives have children, non-partisan people who don't think about politics have children, and nobody wants that that their children get this experiences what sadly some of the children has to get through when they get trafficked or raped and stuff. And
1000%. This is so much bigger than politics. Like, just real quick little soapbox on that topic, because some people think still that child trafficking is a theory, and or that it's a conservative talking point. That is a one-sided political talking point. And let's just take a moment to deconstruct that myth, because point one, this is so much bigger than politics. This is not a team red or team blue issue. This is targeting children. This is an issue that's harming children at a massive rate. So none of us should be okay with that. None of us should think someone else is just going to take care of this and we don't have to worry about it. No. This is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. So yes, politics can affect a lot of things in our life, but this is so much bigger than that. And to put it differently, if this is indeed a political talking point, are we really saying that one side does not care about the sale and exploitation of children and that the other side does? Because I'm not a political person, and to me, politics is like pro wrestling, and we should all see it as such, in my opinion. However, if there's one side that cares and one side that does not care about the children, I'm going to stand with the people who care about children, and hopefully the ones who are actually doing something about it. That being said, to Vicky's point, we've had one president ever mention child trafficking or do anything about it. So when you examine the inaction of our political leaders, knowing that human trafficking is alive and well in our country, knowing there's no dedicated task force for it, knowing that they have the power but choose not to act, it should also lead you to wonder why. That's a rhetorical question. And it leads us also to the next point, that if not us, then who? We're not here because we have nothing better to do with our time. We're here because no one is there, not enough people. There are a few NGOs, there are a few people here and there, but the powers that be, the elected officials who should, and certainly on a massive scale, action is not being taken anywhere close to the rate that it should be. So we're doing what we can. We are a tiny nonprofit. We are not well funded. We're doing everything we can. And we are uniting with people like Vicky, who have the courage to speak up, because there are so few of those people. There are so incredibly few people who will even speak about it or be associated with the topic for the fear of the controversy or the scandal related to what they think is people's idea of the subject of child trafficking. So let me take a moment to remove that excuse from people who think this is a team red versus team blue issue. No, this is a them versus a we the people issue. Specifically, this is a them versus the children issue, and none of us should be okay with that. So the amount of slave trade coming over the border, the amount of slave trade happening within our border, and the bad things happening all around the world and all around our country, this is not just a political talking point. We actually dedicate our lives to this. We've seen it. We're combating it, and we do need your help. So exposing it is a huge piece of making people aware, meaning acknowledging, oh, this is real. This is not a theory. This is actually happening, because awareness is step one in order for step two, which is action. You have to first acknowledge this is real. You have to be aware that this is happening and stop calling it a theory. And then we can actually tailor our strategy to be effective against it. So once again, thank you for what you're doing. And with your documentary series, The Untold Truth, you're unpacking some very uncomfortable facts that not a lot of people are going to hear, but I applaud you for doing it anyway. So tell us more about, we talked about the Catholic Church, we talked about the different three-letter government agencies, and what else can people expect to learn from this documentary series?
So yesterday I was at so I'm located in Florida right now, and I was at a meeting from a congressman from Florida, and he is what everybody expects more from the conservative side, and he was answering questions, and there was one question about what he's thinking about the border and the problem, and how Biden is in charge to change that, or is he doing something, or what does the House now doing, because now the Red party, so the Republicans have the majority there. And it was very funny how he answered. It was totally political. For sure, it was, what Biden does is totally nonsense and crazy and ridiculous. Yeah, that you actually think about that's coming from a Republican congressman. But he didn't really give us a solution or try to give us a solution. And then I tried to, I was not chosen, but I tried people would, or he would say, yeah, I can ask my question. So my question would be, why does a Congress or a House, which has so much power, still let HHS or Homeland Security trafficking children and don't do anything? Because we have so much footage now from Project Veritas, and I was a little bit Googling on YouTube, and I found a Homeland Security hearing from 7 years ago, where the I think congressmen were doing the Homeland Security hearing, and they were asking about a case in Ohio, how that can be that HHS and Homeland Security didn't do their job and looking for the child because the child didn't show up at the first hearing. And it ended up that this child that there were 7 other children who had an immigrant background were in Ohio, child trafficked and doing something horrible. And there were also American children on it. So it's not that this problem is since yesterday there and nobody can just suddenly, okay, we didn't have time to find a solution. No, you have actually years. So my question is, and I think that should everyone ask, how can our tax money end up in that? And how we can solve that? And it's okay, you can go voting. I think that's very important to vote. But we the people should stand up now and get off their couches, because if you only eat popcorn and wait until something will do the job, nobody will do the job. There is no white knight coming on a white horse saving you. We thought that in Germany when we were fighting for our freedom against the COVID mandates, nobody came. So I think probably America has to save the world again and stand up and fight for our rights. But you have to stand up, and you have to stand up for the children. And like I said, the documentary tries to open eyes and give people the courage to do something, because you have to ask yourself, how many red lines can the elites, the politicians, the cartels, or the pedophiles cross until you stand up and say, I do something? And you don't have to go to the border and fight for your right. You can do anything, like exposing, sharing, talk about it, talk with your neighbors about it. Just make people aware of.
Absolutely. And if you don't have the time or the bandwidth or the interest to get involved, we understand. But we ask you to support those of us who are out here on the front lines, not only risking our lives and our health, but actually doing something about it, because we can assure you there are not enough people out here standing with us. So again, exposing it is a huge part of this. It's a huge part of the solution, but it is up to we the people to do something with that knowledge. Knowledge is only power if you do something with it. So to her point, there's awareness, which is important, but we shouldn't assume that somebody else is going to solve this problem and get lazy enough to believe that we can sit back and just watch it solve itself. That's not how this works. And unfortunately, that's what has been happening. And because generally, the American people and the world at large have been unaware or blissfully ignorant of what's actually happening. And we trust these sources of entertainment. And we think that that's real factual information that's telling us what's going on in the world. But it's unfortunate, because this shouldn't be how it works. But they're showing us what they want us to see. So it's important for people to inform themselves about what's really going on, and specifically how they can be part of the solution. We, the people, do have a voice, and it's much more powerful if we stand together united. So again, when you hear all these different layers of complications to these issues, or when a very simple issue like we should protect children becomes complicated and layered and made to make people feel as if they're crazy for believing it, or as if they're a conspiracy theorist, or as if they're part of some sort of extremist type organization, you should question that. You should absolutely question why anyone would add unnecessary complications to something as simple as we should protect children, and we are not okay with our children being exploited, sold, or any other type of words I can't say on these platforms. So again, for those just joining us, again, welcome and thank you for being here. We appreciate you guys for showing up, and we ask you to please share this live stream. Share it with people who don't know. Share it with people who want to learn more. Share it with people who want to get involved. And share this documentary that Vicky and her team have been working on and have been putting out for free as a public service. It's called the Untold Truth. It's on thepatriotchicks.com. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are out, so a lot of your questions will be answered. We do have a question from Brian who says, unclear on how HHS is involved in trafficking. Now, I'm going to let Vicky answer that, but I'm going to give the disclaimer that we do have to be very careful with what we can and cannot say on these platforms. So we're going to address this softly, but the short answer is watch the documentary to learn more.
Yes, so watch the documentary that will which come out next week or upcoming week. I hope we can do it Monday or latest Tuesday. And so the thing is, it's very about how the agencies look away, to say in a quite frankly way, or be a part of it sometimes. But the most critical thing is how they look away and don't do something about it. Like when someone doesn't show up to your first hearing, I don't know if a bounty hunter, so when you are a criminal and don't show up to your court session, there will be a bounty hunter and try to get you. So why is no bounty hunter for those children who come here and go to their sponsors who are most of the time related, like cousins or something? And why don't people have alarm signs when a sponsor has 7 children from different countries who are not related as sponsor, as a family related person? I don't know. Normally this doesn't work like that. So you can maybe you have someone has 2 or 3 cousins in different nearer countries, but that's a very, very rare statistical thing. So
right,
things like that, or when you go to an area and in this area in a very shortage radius, hundreds of children with sponsors, those are signs, and those are signs who are since decades there. It's not like since yesterday. That's the thing. Why what we want to talk about the documentary. It's not because of yesterday. Those problems are longer there, and if you want to get rid of those problems, you have to reform those agencies and the policies, and then you have to think, okay, when the agency says we can't do anything because of the policies, you as we the people should write your person in Senate or in your county, which is in the Congress, and say, okay, why do we have those policies? Why can't you just change those policies? Or why can't you just address that in the next meeting when you come together and talk about those topics? This is the easiest way to say it with not crashing your live stream.
Oof, so important. So important. I'm going to put a link here in the comments for everyone watching, because Vicky brought up a great point. There's a lot of people who say they care. Unfortunately, there's not enough people that actually show up to take action. Now, we want to acknowledge and thank those of you who do, those of you who support us, those of you who are protecting children and doing what you can in your community. That being said, we have a free template that we have put on our website as a public service to walk people through how to identify and write their elected officials. Because a lot of people can post about how mad they are on social media, but not a lot of people will take those same 5 minutes to send a letter to their local officials and demand change, make sure they hear our voices, and make sure they know that we are holding them accountable and that they will not earn our votes by doing nothing. In fact, if they're supporting policies that don't support children and their protection, that don't protect victims, and that don't demand harsher justice for predators, we the people will vote them out, because that is simply so unacceptable. In this day and age, with the amount of information and statistics and resources available, there is no excuse for an elected official not speaking up. At the very least, I need you to say something about it. If you're not, and specifically, if you're not even willing to do anything about it or support the organizations like us who are doing something about it, we the people need to get a lot louder about that. So I'm going to put this here on the screen on vetsforchildrescue.org. Write local officials. You'll see it under the Get Involved section. I want to give that to everyone watching tonight as your homework. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. And it's one of a very powerful way that you can be part of the solution and make sure that the elected officials know that we're holding them accountable. So she said a lot of interesting points, but another really interesting point is that, to oversimplify, it's important for people to realize that this entire problem, what's happening in our country, that's a $50+ billion per year criminal enterprise. This is intentional. This is not an accident. This is not random. This is a very organized, funded, protected enterprise, and it requires the participation of a lot of elected officials who should be protecting we the people. So again, the rhetorical question is, if not, why don't we have a task force for it? If not, why are the elected officials not talking about it? If not, why are they not running their campaign off protecting children in our country? Don't you think that's something everyone should stand behind? If not, why does this topic not make it to the presidential debate stage? There's a lot more questions I could ask you. All of them are rhetorical because it comes down to this. This is an intentional problem. So again, a big part of our mission is to expose this, because if we the people create a non-permissive environment, let me say that clearly, if we stop allowing this, if we stop allowing them to get away with this, we could actually turn this tide. Yes, it's a massive problem. Yes, there is intentional opposition that we are so aware of. Yes, this is a dangerous fight to combat because we're putting our lives on the line, because there are a lot of people who don't want us to share this message. We're here anyway. That's not going to stop us. But what we need from you guys, those who care about children, those who say they care, those who actually want to help, we need you guys to get involved. We need you guys to join us in this fight. And there are so many things that you can do to be part of the solution. So again, your homework for tonight is to write your elected officials. That template is on our website, v4cr.org or vets4childrescue.org. And then I'm also going to repost the link to this new docu-series that the Patriot Chicks are working on, because this exposure piece is a huge part of people informing themselves of the problem, so that, again, we can customize the solution. Because if this was not an intentional problem, the general solutions would apply. But we have to be a little more creative, because unfortunately there's a lot of opposition for this message. So this docu-series is revealing a lot of what's going on in this country. It's showing real footage, real evidence. So again, please watch it and please share it, because they don't want you to see it, and we need you to know the truth.
And when I can say, because many people say, oh, we don't want to hear such stuff happening in America. So maybe I can tell a little story about what's happening in Germany. So we have now the Green Party in our parliament, and the Green Party was the party till the late 90s who wanted to legalize marriage with 14. Then we had a homepage what called 𝘁𝗶𝗀𝗘. When you go there, you can see the radius about how many child porn users are. And I did a little bit of research, and I Googled Berlin, our main capital, where our parliament is, and it was blinking red. So maybe, and this homepage was not very long online, so they shut that down. So those are indications for everyone who says, okay, maybe we should start thinking about that our politicians have different intentions and why they don't want to talk about it. I don't say that everyone does this, but there is a percentage which is very dangerous, because if there wouldn't be so much people doing such stuff, they wouldn't delete a homepage. They wouldn't silence journalists talking about it. They would not put a target around organizations who are fighting it. They would actually say, okay, how can we help you as an NGO doing your job better? Or how can you as an NGO give us more advice to create a unit, a federal unit to fight this, not only little sections in the FBI and in local law enforcement. I don't say that they don't do a good job. They do a great job. But what you learn in chapter 1, after defunding the police, they can't even do their job going to the street and fighting against human trafficking or prostitution, because they have to answer the calls for the next stabbing, the next violent crime, the next house raiding, and not house raiding, but when somebody steals something, like other crimes where you call 911, because there are not enough manpower anymore, because everyone is defunding the police. So now should ask yourself, why does we want to defund the police? Why do we want to take those powers from our executive agencies who can actually help with a legal background or with those powers from the government? So why is the government actually putting them down? Those are questions that every person should ask himself. And it's not a question about you supporting Back the Blue or nothing. Because when you look to California and see what's happening since they defund the police, I don't think that people who was screaming defund the police like it there right now. So every action has a reaction, and people should think about first before they start yelling and trying to destroy someone.
1000%. There's so much that if you, again, remove the noise and you just break it down to logic, it's really quite, I was going to use the word simple. I wouldn't say it's necessarily simple, but it is quite logical in terms of how this works. So let's back up. We've covered a lot of things tonight, but let's go back to the Super Bowl, because where we started was that Vicky was involved with covering, as an investigative journalist, covering some of the counter-trafficking operations we were doing at the Super Bowl this year. So for example, as we as a nonprofit struggle to raise awareness, struggle to get this message out, struggle to get past the powers that be that don't want us to share this message, there's a lot of people who have been confused by messaging that leads them to believe that this is a theory. And we are there to answer their questions, but a recurring theme is that people don't understand the very basic concept of supply and demand. So I just want to oversimplify it to anyone who doesn't understand, to those who haven't been there, done that, helped out, and or those who think we're just maybe being dramatic, because we get comments like that, and I have no problem unpacking that ignorance, but it really does come down to something as simple as this. When you increase the demand, the supply also increases. Let me say that a different way. When you bring a big event to any city, that city will have more sales of alcohol and food and entertainment and pretty much everything across the board. So you increase the demand, which increases the supply. Restaurants will order more food to feed more customers. This is basic economics. Okay. So because people are generally there for an event to party and have a good time, there's going to be a percentage of those people that have a desire for bad things. Okay, we're going to oversimplify this. So when those people's desire for bad things, especially involves harming children, once again, the supply tends to increase. So we are not here to call out the Super Bowl specifically. We're using it as an example because it's one of, if not the largest annual events in the USA. So there are many large events that increase the demand for everything in the area that they're in. Again, because we're a nonprofit that has a mission to protect children, we are aware that there are a lot more victims around those types of events, because once again, people are there to party and sometimes their desires are quite evil. So if you talk to a victim, if you talk to a survivor who was trafficked, they will tell you it is a place where, let's just say, the industry is busier at that time. We're only unpacking this not because it's a fun thing to talk about, but because we want to oversimplify the logic so that anyone who thinks it's a theory or that we're just making this up can maybe reevaluate that train of thought and understand that, yes, this is how that happens. It's proven. There have been many arrests as well as rescues surrounding these events, but unfortunately, they're not enough because this industry is very secretive. It enjoys a lot of protection. There's a lot of intentional suppression of this message. Those of us who are out here trying to tell people what it looks like, what to do, and how to protect children, we don't have an easy time reaching people with this message because it's difficult to get around the people who don't want us to talk about that. Again, we're here anyway. We're not afraid of them. But one of the reasons we need you to not only listen, but take this seriously is because there's something that all of us can do. Now, imagine if everyone attending a large event was aware and knew what to look for and was watching the children around them. What if those hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people could actually be aware and be part of the solution? What if they could create a non-permissive environment, not only in the stadium, but in the surrounding areas and bars and clubs and restaurants and motels and hotels and areas? What if one children could be saved? What if one child could be prevented from harm? Would that matter to people? Would that be significant? What if it was 10 children? What if it was 50 children? That should matter to people. But again, when you unpack the ignorance surrounding people's excuses, it comes down to either fear and or some form of ignorance. And I promise you, ignorance is not bliss when children are being harmed because of it. So again, exposing this problem and raising people's level of awareness is so important. And we do need everyone, we the people, to take the responsibility to protect children, but also to create a non-permissive environment for the people who want to harm children. It's quite simple, actually.
Yep. You said that perfect.
We are passionate to our core, in case you haven't known. Again, this is what we live and breathe. And again, we are confronted with a lot of people who like to call us conspiracy theorists and a lot of other things. Speaking for myself, I take no offense to that ignorance. It's just that I know too much. I've lived this myself, unfortunately. This is something I've actually experienced and escaped. So when I talk about it, not only from experience, but from a place of passion, people like Vicky and I and Craig Sawyer and the volunteers in our organization and our operators, we have seen this. We have seen too much. And it's not so important for us to unpack every gruesome story that would make you weep and haunt your nightmares. We need you to take this seriously before this happens to you or someone you love. We need you to actually look into this and look past Google and the media, because I promise you, research takes a little more than that, because those people are not showing you the full story.
Yep.
So we're going to repost the documentary that Vicky and her team on the Patriot Chicks are putting out. I'm going to repost it here on the screen and in the comments. patriotchicks.com.
Yes.
The Untold Truth documentary. This is an amazing exposure piece. There's, how many chapters are you guys putting out in the series?
And so we are planning with 7. So we actually planned with 6, but Jamie and I were thinking about telling people why we wanted to do this documentary. So the chapter 7 will be a very, very personal and I think eye-opening one, because why do people like us do this? And I think we should tell a little bit about people what our experiences was, and that's gonna be in chapter 7. Why I and Jamie wanted to do that, and why we are so passionate in it. And it's not only because I'm a single mom. Let's say it like that, so people get excited and want to watch it till the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of us who are in this fight have simply seen too much or experienced this to some degree, and it makes us very intolerant to this evil. But again, because we dedicate our lives to this, it also makes you question those who would throw shade on those of us who are actually putting ourselves out there to be part of the solution, because often those same people seem to think that what we're doing isn't good enough, but they're not the ones funding us or helping us or doing
anything.
Absolutely. So again, there are many, many ways you can be part of the solution. Even if you're not supporting our organizations or what our projects are doing, we would love to see you find a way to be part of the solution. And that does start in your community, with your children, with your family, with your church, with your school, with your children's friends. This is something that all of us have the option and even the responsibility to protect children. And it starts at home. It starts with us.
Yes.
So there's, we could talk for hours because there's so much more to say here, but I guess we've talked about the Untold Truth documentary. So if you guys please watch and share it. It's on the patriotchicks.com. And then tell us about what else is coming up and how people can support you in your work.
So you can actually find everything on our website, because I have a horrible accent and sometimes people don't understand my German accent. So you can support us. We have a Give and Go, because all of our work, what we're going to do, is self-funded. This documentary is self-funded, and as you understand, when you are investigative journalist and people don't really want to share your stuff because you maybe expose something what people don't want to see, or people who have power don't want to see, you get very easily silenced and censorship and deleted from every platform. So if you want to support us, even give us prayers or think about us, or just share our documentary, that would help us a lot, and that would help the mission. And yeah, what's coming on? We are boots on the ground journalists, so we are also doing documentaries about J6 and stuff. There will be something what's coming out. And we want to dig a little bit in the election integrity, but that's not my my topic more. So I'm not so into the election integrity stuff in your country, because I'm obviously not an American citizen, so I have to learn more about the Constitution. So that's more Jamie's part, but she's really, really good in it, and she had experience about election fraud in her area. And yeah, just stay tuned, subscribe on our newsletter, and please support organizations like Vets for Child Rescue, because those are people who are actually doing something. I'm repeating myself, sorry. And they really have their heart on the right place. And working with Craig Sawyer and talking with you, Kim, it's so important. And I'm so grateful to be a part in that and could be a part in it. And yeah, just work together and help those children, because this is the main mission, and we should be mission focused. And this is what I try to say to everyone, because if we are all fighting against each other, the other party wins. Because Caesar wrote a very nice book. It was the Bello Gallico, where he was writing how he defeated the Gallians in Latin, and he said, divide and conquer. So don't give them the chance to divide and conquer us. Be united. And it's only in the topic about saving children. We have to be united and fight that, because first comes the children, and then maybe we can talk about the next political thing. But those should be the primary topics we should work on.
1000%. I'm going to say that a little louder for the people in the back. Saving children, protecting children, this is the hill we die on. This is the one thing that should unite us all, regardless of your lifestyle, your preferences. Like, it should not matter. We should all unite around this topic of protecting children. I'm not a mom. I don't have kids. I'm not here fighting for my freedom. I escaped child trafficking at the age of 20, and I was born and raised into an environment where I experienced this. This is not a joke to us. This is real. When people don't take it seriously, we have a intolerance for that perspective, but it's because we know too much, and we know that this is also a solvable problem. And we know that most people are simply too afraid to even acknowledge it, and much less take action. But once again, petite females like Vicky and I, Vicky's actually tactically trained. She's a badass. She's actually a German special operations veteran and top 10 of the German Antifa hit list, and the cartels don't like her for her work on the southern border. But
yeah, the hit list.
Little less are out here. It's because not enough people are, and hopefully we can be an example that even people like us can have the courage to make a difference. And by the way, I just want to soapbox this real quick. Evil is not that scary. They want us to think it's scary because they want us not to take action or have the courage to face it. Let's unpack this real quick. Evil is pathetic. Evil is not as scary as they would like you to believe. Evil's target is children. That's how pathetic this is. So no adult should have the excuse that it's too scary or they don't know what to do, or I don't know what other excuses people are using, but this topic of protecting children, this is the hill that we plant our flag in. We are not here to fight. We are here to overcome. And the way that you eradicate darkness, because realize, darkness is simply the absence of light. The way that you eradicate the thickest darkness in the darkest place is you light a match. And that darkness has no power in the face of that light. That little tiny flicker of light can eradicate darkness, and the darkness cannot even touch it. So imagine if we could ignite enough people to shine the light bright enough that we could not only eradicate the darkness, but every single shadow. This is possible, and their biggest fear is that we figure that out and stand together with our flames ignited and light up this world. So that's our goal, and we hope that you'll join us. We hope that it matters to you that children are being targeted and that we have the ability, the responsibility to protect them. We hope we can count on you. We hope to see you with us in this fight, or that you'll at the very least support us who are out here exposing this and eradicating this. So thank you guys again for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for writing your elected officials. Thank you for watching and sharing this documentary. And thank you for protecting your children. Vicky, thank you again for being here. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We're definitely excited to follow you, see more of you, and also continue fighting this evil. Let's take it down.
Yeah, take it down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night. Bye.